This is not a war for oil. Oil is only the surface. The real fight is about control. Control over fear, control over movement, control over markets, and control over the story the world is forced to believe. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a shipping route anymore. It is a psychological weapon. A narrow piece of water has become a choke point for the entire global economy, and everyone knows it. If that route is threatened, oil jumps, markets panic, governments react, and ordinary people pay the price. That is why this crisis matters so much. Not because oil is the soul of the conflict, but because oil is the fastest way to spread fear across the world. Donald Trump understands this kind of power very well. He does not play politics like a careful diplomat. He plays it like a man who wants to dominate the room before the negotiation even begins. He raises pressure, creates tension, and turns every conflict into a test of will. His message is simple: I will push harder than you, and I will make everyone watch. That is why this moment fits his style perfectly. The pressure on Iran, the language of strength, the warnings, the focus on Hormuz, all of it creates one image, an image of control. Not just military control, but psychological control. The ability to make allies, enemies, and markets react to your next move before you even make it. But Iran is not only reacting to pressure. Iran is reacting to humiliation, and that makes the crisis far more dangerous. Countries do not only fear defeat, they fear looking weak. They fear being seen as broken, cornered, or forced to kneel. For Iran, Hormuz is not only an economic tool, it is a symbol of leverage, a symbol that says, we may be under pressure, but we still have the power to shake the world. And once a symbol becomes that important, compromise starts to feel like surrender. That is why this is not simply a negotiation over oil routes or sanctions. It is a struggle over status, pride, and the right to decide who bends first. Israel enters this crisis with a different logic, but the psychology is just as powerful. For Israel, security is not an abstract word. It is a constant state of pressure, a constant calculation of risk, a constant fear that hesitation today becomes catastrophe tomorrow. That is why force often feels safer than uncertainty. That is why weakness feels more dangerous than escalation. So now, three different psychological forces are colliding at the same time. Trump wants dominance, Iran wants dignity, Israel wants security. And when dominance, dignity, and security collide in the same region, peace becomes fragile. Because every side feels that stepping back comes with a cost it cannot afford. This is where oil becomes important, but not in the simple way most people think. Oil is not the reason for everything. Oil is the amplifier. Oil is what translates political tension into global pain. When oil prices rise, the conflict leaves the battlefield and enters daily life. It reaches transport, food, inflation, elections, and public anger. That is when control becomes visible. Because the side that can influence that fear is influencing more than energy. It is influencing the emotional climate of entire nations. This is why the Strait of Hormuz matters so much. It is not just a route for tankers, it is a pressure valve for the modern world, a small space with enormous psychological power. One threat there can reach the stock market, the White House, military headquarters, European economies, and the wallet of an ordinary person who has never even seen the Gulf on a map. That is real power, the power to trigger reaction without even firing the final shot. And this is why the crisis keeps escalating. Each side believes pressure will improve its position. Trump believes pressure creates submission. Iran believes pressure creates leverage. Israel believes pressure creates deterrence. But pressure has a dark side. It narrows thinking. It makes every move look like weakness unless it is answered with more force. It traps leaders inside the image they build for themselves. Once a leader becomes the symbol of strength, retreat becomes psychologically difficult. Not because retreat is always wrong, but because it looks like defeat to the audience watching. And that is the real trap of power. Powerful men often create crises they believe they can control until every side starts using the same logic. Then the conflict is no longer guided by calm strategy. It is driven by pride, fear, image, and the need to avoid humiliation. At that point, even rational decisions become harder to make. So no, this is not a war for oil. Oil is the scoreboard. Oil is the alarm. Oil is what the world measures. But underneath it all, this is a war for control. Control over shipping routes, control over fear, control over prices, control over prestige, control over who tells the story and who is forced to live inside it. The most dangerous part of this crisis is not just what happens in the sea, it is what happens in the minds of the people leading it. Because when power becomes identity, compromise starts to feel like weakness. And when leaders fear looking weak more than they fear escalation, the whole world becomes more unstable. That is why this crisis matters. It exposes a brutal truth about geopolitics. Sometimes nations do not fight because they need more resources. Sometimes they fight because they cannot afford to lose control of the narrative. They cannot afford to look small. They cannot afford to be the one that blinks first. And that is why a narrow waterway can suddenly hold the attention of the entire world. Because this is no longer just about oil. This is about control, fear, and the psychology of power.